Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
I remember standing behind the thick maroon curtain backstage, my palms sweating through the polyester fabric of my gown, my breath catching every few seconds like it couldn't decide whether to escape or stay trapped. I could hear the applause from the audience as the graduates before me walked across the stage, each name called out like a bell ringing for the end of an era. I scanned the rows of seats again, squinting past the camera flashes and oversized bouquets. I saw uncles hugging nieces, fathers whistling loud enough to rattle the rafters, mothers waving with both hands like their child was about to board a space shuttle. But in the fifth row, seats 7 and 8, where they were supposed to be, there was only empty space. 2 gray plastic chairs, one with a program folded neatly across the seat, the other untouched. No one sitting. No one coming. My name echoed through the speakers like a slap, Emily Rose Carter. And I smiled like I was supposed to. I walked across the stage, shaking the dean's hand, clutching the diploma case like it weighed more than the 4 years and 2 jobs that got me there. There was polite applause, a few scattered cheers from the friends I made along the way. But not the ones I needed. Not from them. I sat back down and felt it, not disappointment, not sadness. Something worse. A numbness so deep it scraped my ribs. I kept telling myself, maybe they got stuck in traffic. Maybe they got the time wrong. Maybe there was an emergency with the dog or a last-minute mix-up with Tyler. But somewhere, deep in my gut, I already knew. This wasn't a mistake. This was exactly what it looked like. On the walk back to my car, I kept my head down. My roommate, Tanya, hugged me tight and said she'd take a bunch of photos later so we could fake it for social media. I nodded, pretending that sounded like a plan, though I knew I wouldn't post a single one. I drove home with my gown bunched up around me, the honor cords twisted tight around my neck like a joke only I understood. When I pulled into the driveway, I thought maybe they'd be waiting there, arms open, shouting surprise, maybe even crying a little with pride. The porch was lit up, sure. But not for me. Music pulsed through the walls loud, sloppy pop music that only Tyler would blast unironically. There were balloons tied to the fence, a giant "You Did It" banner sagging across the garage door, and people everywhere. Our lawn looked like the aftermath of a college tailgate. I walked inside and was hit with the smell of pizza, perfume, and cheap beer. My cousin Jake was yelling something about beer pong. My Aunt Linda was cutting a cake shaped like a calculator. The frosting read, "Congrats, Tyler, you passed math," in weird, shaky letters. There were balloons with little cartoon numbers on them and a poster with Tyler's face photoshopped onto Albert Einstein's body. Everyone was laughing. Tyler spotted me from across the room. He was holding a solo cup and wearing sunglasses indoors, which told me he was already a few drinks deep. Hey, look who finally showed up, he shouted, throwing an arm around me like we were best friends at a barbecue. I could barely breathe. I looked at my mom. She was by the punch bowl, smiling like she hadn't just missed one of the most important days of my life. My dad was in the corner arguing with the karaoke machine. Neither of them even flinched when they saw me. No guilt. No, oh my God, we're so sorry. Nothing. I finally said, "You missed my graduation." The words hung there for a second, suspended in the middle of Tyler's party like a fly in jello. My mom blinked like she forgot what I was talking about. "Oh, honey, I know, and we are so proud of you, but Tyler finally passed that math class. You know how hard it's been for him. We wanted to give him something special to encourage him." Her voice was calm, casual. Like it was totally normal to ditch your daughter's college graduation to celebrate your son managing to scrape by with a C-. "You could have rescheduled the party," I said, my voice low, trying not to make a scene. She frowned, as if I'd just told her the dog died. "We didn't think you'd mind," she said. "You've always been so independent. You don't need the spotlight." It wasn't just about the party. It was never just about the stay. It was about every science fair I won where they showed up late, Every parent-teacher conference they skipped because Tyler had practice. Every time I heard, "Tyler's having a rough time. Can you help him study?" Or, "You're the strong one, Emily." I was the built-in babysitter, the third parent, the backup plan. And I'd swallowed it for years. But this was the moment I stopped chewing. I walked out before they could hand me a slice of cake or shove a cup of soda into my hand. I left the house filled with cheers and toasts and Tyler's slurred victory speech. I got in my car, diploma still in my hand, and just sat there. For a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. I just let the numbness settle deeper, like concrete hardening over a crack. And in that moment, I knew something had snapped. Not like a rubber band that you can tie back together. Like a tree branch in winter. Cold, brittle, final. I hadn't said it out loud yet, not even to myself. But it was already happening. The distance. The silence. The beginning of the end. And I hadn't even opened the front door yet. The next morning, I woke up before the sun even had the decency to rise, still wearing the clothes I'd passed out in the night before, crumpled on the couch with my graduation gown folded neatly over the armrest like some sad, ceremonial reminder of what had just happened. I didn't even bother checking my phone at first, because I already knew what would be waiting there. Probably a dozen missed calls from my mother, a few passive-aggressive texts from my dad, maybe even a meme from Tyler pretending like none of it mattered. And that's what got me, not just the party, not just them choosing him again, but the absolute ease with which they did it, like flipping a coin and calling heads, knowing it would always land in their favor. I dragged myself into the kitchen where the smell of old coffee and microwave dinners still lingered in the air, and there it was, a card. A graduation card. Sitting on the counter like it had been tossed there as an afterthought, like it wasn't supposed to fix anything, but was supposed to be enough anyway. The front had a glittery cap and diploma printed across it, with bold letters that read, "The future is yours." And inside, in my dad's slanted all-caps handwriting, were the words, "We're so proud of you, Emily. Go chase your dreams." Folded inside was a check for $200. No note. No apology. Just that. $200. After 4 years of college. After nights of tutoring kids in the library, of working at that diner until my legs ached, of sacrificing sleep to cram for finals and still managing to wash Tyler's stupid soccer uniform when he forgot. I stared at that check so long it started to look like a joke. A cruel, insulting joke scribbled in blue ink. Later that afternoon, I drove over to their house, not because I wanted to talk, but because I needed to see them face to face before I made a decision I couldn't take back. I needed to give them one last chance to be decent. The door was unlocked, as usual, and I walked in on the tail end of what sounded like Tyler trying to convince Mom to let him borrow her car because his was being a little bitch again, whatever that meant. She didn't even scold him for the language. She just laughed like it was charming, like his irresponsibility was quirky. When she saw me, her face lit up like I was a visiting friend, not her daughter who'd just been skipped over like some inconvenient obligation. "Oh, you didn't stay long last night," she said, brushing her hands off on a dish towel, as if I'd just left a barbecue early, not stormed out of my own house in disbelief. "We missed you." I blinked at her, unable to believe the audacity. "You missed my graduation," I said again, this time quieter, like maybe the silence would shame her. It didn't. "I know, honey," she said, her voice dropping to that soft, sweet tone she always used when she was about to dismiss my feelings like a pouting child. But Tyler really needed that moment. He's been struggling, and we wanted to show him that hard work pays off too. I stood there, stunned, half expecting my dad to chime in with some kind of apology or acknowledgement. But instead, he walked in from the garage holding a wrench, gave me a nod, and said, "Did you get the card? Figured you could use a little something to celebrate." As if $200 was supposed to cover the emotional damage they'd just racked up in a single evening. "So yeah," I said, the words slipping out bitter and sharp. After working 2 jobs for 4 years, I ended up with $35,000 in debt and a $200 check. That should totally cancel each other out, right? I didn't even realize how ridiculous the math sounded until the words hung in the air, laced with sarcasm and venom. But nobody corrected me. Nobody even laughed. Tyler just shrugged and said, "You're lucky, Em. At least you finished college. I don't even know what I'm doing next." And that was the final crack. Not a blowout, not an explosion, just a quiet, almost imperceptible snap in the structure of something that had already been worn thin. My mother reached for my shoulder, but I stepped back before she could touch me. I didn't want their comfort. I didn't want their explanations. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they'd done. I went upstairs to my old room, grabbed a few things I'd left behind, a couple of books, a framed photo of me at my high school graduation, which they had attended, I suddenly remembered, only because Tyler's middle school recital had been canceled that night. Then I pulled out my phone. I opened the family group chat, the one with years of recipes, appointment reminders, jokes, passive-aggressive emojis from my dad, and texts from my mom saying, "Can someone please pick up Tyler?" I didn't say anything. No final message. No mic drop. I just held my thumb on the group name, clicked leave group, and then hit delete. The silence that followed was immediate and so loud it rang in my ears. I walked out of the house without saying goodbye. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even slam the door. But this time I didn't feel numb. This time I felt done. The first few days after walking out of that house felt like exhaling after holding my breath underwater for far too long, like I had finally broken the surface and taken a gulp of something that wasn't laced with obligation, guilt, or that constant gnawing need to please people who never once made space for me to just be myself. I turned my phone off for a week straight, buried it in the drawer with the takeout menus and old chargers, because every time it buzzed I felt my stomach clench, like it was preparing for a hit that was always coming but never surprising. They texted, of course. My mom sent those kinds of messages that teetered between guilt and control, like, "I hope you're okay, sweetie," followed an hour later by, "It really hurt us when you left like that." My dad was more blunt. "Don't do something you'll regret," was the last one he sent before he stopped trying altogether. I let the notifications pile up like snow on a windshield, thick, quiet, blinding. I didn't respond. Not once. Not because I didn't have things to say, but because I had already said them 1,000 times before, with my actions, with my silence. With every time I swallowed my frustration and smiled through it all just to keep the peace in a house where peace only existed if Tyler was happy. By the end of the second week, I had applied for a job out of state, one I'd always wanted but never dared to take because it would mean leaving them behind completely. But now, the idea of a fresh start somewhere far away didn't feel selfish or dramatic. It felt necessary, like a lifeline I should have grabbed years ago. When I got the offer, I accepted without hesitation. I packed my apartment in 2 days, rented a U-Haul, and didn't even tell my closest friends until I was already on the road, crossing state lines with the windows down and the music up like I was running from a fire that had already burned half the house down. It was my cousin Marissa who found out first, because I forgot to untag myself from a photo someone posted of me in my new city, standing outside the office, smiling with a coffee in one hand and a new badge clipped to my shirt. She texted me immediately, something like, "Girl, are you living in Chicago now?" And I didn't have the energy to lie, so I just said, yeah, needed a change. Within 24 hours, the news had trickled through the family like spilled oil, slow and sticky and impossible to clean up. That was when Tyler sent me a message. A direct one, like we were still teenagers avoiding mom's group texts. It read, "Are you seriously still mad about that party? Grow up, Em." That was it. No hello, no attempt to understand, no acknowledgement of what had actually happened, just a lazy finger point and a shrug dressed up as a message. I didn't even answer. I blocked him so fast it felt like swatting a fly that had been buzzing around my ear for years. After that, everything got still. For the first time in forever, I wasn't tangled up in family group chats, or stuck organizing birthday dinners no one thanked me for, or driving across town to drop off something Tyler forgot again. My birthday came and went without a single call from them. No card, no text, not even one of those generic posts on social media with a recycled photo and a "love you always" caption. It stung. I'd be lying if I said it didn't, but it also confirmed what I'd always suspected deep down. I was only useful when I was convenient. Thanksgiving passed in a blur. I spent it eating store-bought pie and watching documentaries on the couch with my coworker's cat, who hated everyone except me. Christmas music started creeping into stores before December even hit, and every time I heard those sleigh bells or saw a wreath, I felt a twist in my chest I couldn't name. It wasn't regret. It wasn't even sadness. It was something colder, like grief for something I never really had but always hoped was coming. Then, Christmas Eve. I was in the kitchen wearing my oldest hoodie and mismatched socks, halfway through heating up a frozen lasagna I pretended was homemade, just to make myself feel festive, when there was a knock at the door. Not the usual, casual kind of knock either. This one was heavy, insistent, the kind that tells you someone isn't just stopping by. I peeked through the peephole and froze. It was them. My mother, clutching a gift bag like it could buy forgiveness, and my father behind her, arms crossed, jaw tight, like he'd been dragged here against his better judgment. I didn't open the door right away. I just stood there, heart pounding, staring at the people who used to be my world and now felt like strangers I hadn't yet decided whether I wanted to let in. They didn't call ahead. They didn't ask if I was even home. They just showed up, as if the last few months hadn't happened, as if walking away hadn't been the loudest thing I'd ever done. My mother looked up at the peephole like she could feel me behind it and whispered something I couldn't hear, but it didn't matter because the fact that they were there, standing in front of my life uninvited, told me everything I needed to know. They hadn't come to listen. They had come to fix me. I don't know how long I stood there frozen on the other side of the door, hand hovering near the knob, but not quite touching it, like even that tiny act might give away too much. The knock had stopped, but their shadows still stretched under the frame, unmoving and expectant, as if they believed that just being present, physically there, was going to be enough to undo months of silence and a lifetime of imbalance. I finally opened the door slowly, deliberately, not because I was ready, but because part of me needed to see them, needed to confirm with my own eyes that they hadn't changed one bit. My mother smiled when the door cracked open, the kind of smile that's more about survival than sincerity, like she was trying to control the room before a single word was said. Her eyes were glassy, makeup too perfect for someone who'd supposedly driven 2 states over in desperation. My dad stood behind her, arms folded like a damn bouncer, the kind of stance that screamed, "I don't want to be here," even though he'd obviously come along for the ride. Tyler, though, he leaned against the hallway wall, scrolling his phone, his expression flat and blank, like he was there by force, and already mentally halfway back to whatever bar or girl he'd left behind. "Emily," my mom said, drawing out my name like it was a prayer, "can we please come in? Just for a minute. We just want to talk." Her voice cracked in just the right places to make her sound fragile, like she was the victim of some great injustice instead of the woman who'd skipped her daughter's graduation to frost a cake that said, "You did it, Tyler," in crooked blue letters. I didn't move to let them in. Instead, I leaned against the doorframe and looked at each of them slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch until it got uncomfortable enough for my dad to clear his throat. "You've made your point," he said, in that low, firm tone he always used when trying to pass off emotional failure as authority. "You were hurt. We get it. But this has gone too far." I nearly laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so painfully predictable. They didn't get it, not even close. And they never would, not really, because people like my father didn't know how to see pain unless it came with visible bruises or screaming. Emotional absence? Psychological favoritism? That stuff was invisible to him. And if it couldn't be measured, it didn't matter. I don't think you get anything, I said. Finally, my voice calm but sharp, each word clipped clean like surgical steel. You didn't come here to understand. You came here to fix the version of me that made you uncomfortable. My mom reached out, fingertips brushing against the doorframe, eyes starting to fill with tears, real ones this time, or maybe just well-rehearsed. We miss you, she whispered. It's not the same without you. Tyler misses you too. I turned to him then, and he looked up from his phone like he'd just remembered where he was. His mouth opened like he was about to speak, but no words came. He shrugged instead, that lazy, indifferent shrug he'd been using since we were kids, the one that always got him out of chores, accountability, and consequences. You miss me, I said, tilting my head. Why? Because no one's doing your laundry anymore? Because you actually had to take the bus like a normal adult instead of driving my car while I worked 2 shifts? Tyler rolled his eyes and muttered something under his breath, but I didn't care enough to ask him to repeat it. Instead, I turned back to my mother. You want to know what I think? I said, my voice still low, still surgical, each word slicing carefully between the bones of our history. You never raised a daughter. You raised a placeholder. Someone to pick up the slack when Tyler dropped the ball. Someone to babysit him, tutor him, excuse him, clean up after him, take the blame when things went wrong and disappear when he needed the spotlight. Her mouth opened, and for a second, I saw the flicker of realization, the brief and terrifying possibility that she might finally understand what I'd been carrying. But then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by that desperate, trembling motherly concern that always turned into guilt-tripping. That's not fair, she said. You're being cruel. We did the best we could. We love you. No, I said, stepping forward, closing the gap between us. You loved the version of me that made life easier. You loved the reliable daughter. The girl who didn't ask for too much. The one who smiled at the family dinners while you passed the gravy to Tyler and forgot to ask how my classes were going. My dad stepped in then, frustration bubbling up like a pot too long left on the stove. We didn't come here to get lectured, he snapped. We came to bring our family back together. This isn't a family, I replied, cool and sharp. This is a performance. And I'm done being part of the background. They stood there in stunned silence, as if hearing it all out loud made it more real than it ever had been inside their heads. My mom's lips trembled, her hand shaking as she held out the gift bag like it was some kind of peace treaty, something material to fill the cavern between us. I brought you something, she said, her voice barely audible. Just something for Christmas. I didn't take it. I didn't even look inside. I didn't need anything from them anymore. Not a sweater, not a check, not another apology wrapped in excuses and covered in holiday tissue paper. So what, she said, her voice breaking now, real and raw for maybe the first time, you're never going to be part of this family again? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Then, without another word, I stepped back inside and I shut the door. Time didn't sprint forward. After that door closed, it crept, like a tide slowly swallowing the shoreline, pulling bits and pieces of the past back out to sea while leaving behind the quiet debris of what had been. I spent that winter learning how to be alone without being lonely, learning how to wake up in a place that didn't echo with the expectations of people who only called when they needed something. My apartment was small, and it smelled faintly of fresh paint and lemon cleaner, but it was mine in a way nothing else ever had been. The walls were bare at first, the furniture minimal, but slowly it became a place where I could breathe without having to explain myself, without having to brace for the next emotional withdrawal from a family that had always seen me as a steady account they could dip into on demand. My job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and then some, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to calculate whether I could afford groceries and my student loan payment in the same week. I was doing good work that mattered, surrounded by people who respected me and didn't make me feel like my value was attached to how quiet or accommodating I could be. I went to bed without checking my phone 10 times. I stopped waiting for the guilt to sneak in like it used to quietly, suddenly, in the middle of brushing my teeth or pouring coffee. It still showed up sometimes, sure, but less often, and when it didn't stay as long. And that, I told myself, was healing. I met people. Not a boyfriend, not yet, not then, but real, kind people who didn't know me as someone's daughter or someone's big sister, people who didn't look at me with that look that said, "You're so together." Like it was a compliment when it was actually just another way of saying we like how invisible you make your needs. And for the first time in forever, I didn't have to prove anything. I just was. And it was enough. But there were still days, not many, but enough, when I'd wake up and wonder if I'd gone too far. If shutting them out completely had been justified, or if I'd simply done what they always feared I would, become cold, distant, unforgiving. I never saw it that way, but the thought floated there like a ghost in a hallway. Had I burned a bridge, or finally stopped setting myself on fire to light a path they refused to walk? It was early spring, almost 5 months after the night they came to my door, when I got the message. It was from my aunt, my dad's sister, the one who always stayed out of the drama, but watched everything like a quiet referee. Her text was short, no fluff, no "hope you're doing well." Just, "Tyler got arrested. He stole from your parents. Thought you should know." I stared at the words for a long time, rereading them over and over like they might suddenly mean something different. She didn't say what he stole or why, but the implication was loud enough to shake something loose inside me. My first feeling, and I hated this about myself, wasn't sympathy. It was validation. Ugly, sharp, and a little sick, but real. Because here it was. The golden boy had finally tripped over the pedestal they'd built for him, and the crash wasn't silent. I didn't respond to my aunt. I didn't ask for details. But a week later, another message came, this time from an unknown number, probably my mother, though she didn't sign it. It said, "He's out. We're figuring things out. I'm seeing someone for help. I wish you were here." I didn't reply to that either. But I saved the number. Later that week, a small envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, just my name in familiar handwriting, hers, for sure. I didn't open it. Not out of anger, but because I didn't know what I wanted to find inside. An apology? A confession? A plea? Whatever it was, I wasn't ready for it. Maybe I never would be. I left it on the kitchen counter, then moved it to the desk drawer, then pulled it back out and let it sit by the window where I could see it every morning, unopened, untouched, not ignored, but not embraced either. Some people will never understand the kind of grief that comes with walking away from people who are still alive, people who believe they love you, people who don't realize the harm they've done because it never came in screams or fists, only in silence, absence, and favoritism dressed up as care. The kind of grief that tells you were never actually part of something whole, only something convenient. I thought maybe I'd miss them more. But the truth is, what I missed wasn't real. I missed the idea of family. The version I used to make up in my head when I watched holiday commercials or saw other people hugging their parents at graduation. I missed something I never really had. And once I realized that, the pain started to let go of me. I still don't know if I'll open that letter. Some days I want to tear it to pieces just to stop wondering, and some days I think I'll open it on a rainy afternoon when the ache comes back like an old friend. But for now, it stays where it is, a quiet symbol of everything I've left behind and everything I've finally started to become. Sometimes, going no contact isn't a punishment. It's a rescue mission for yourself.